JPR number 6 will cover the donning and doffing of PPE. Now this isn't listed as a mandatory, but this is one that you will almost certainly be doing because at some point you'll do an evolution where you'll be wearing your personal protective equipment and SCBA. So this will be evaluated in conjunction with another JPR, usually your product control or another active team exercise. So this JPR will be satisfied alongside others. So to go through it, we're simply demonstrating that we can don and doff PPE with SCBA, work in a hazardous environment, address decontamination, and get out of our gear. Be wary of safety fails on this. We don't want to unmask in a hazardous environment. We don't want to risk exposure, all those things that could potentially fail us based on safety. Make sure you're breathing supplied air before you go into the hazardous environment, things like that to avoid any question about exposure or risking safety fails. All the equipment will be provided to you. And again, this will most likely be part of a larger scenario, and your proctors will line you out on what gear you're going to be wearing. You won't have to guess. So you'll put on your bunker gear, and you'll breathe air. You'll go in, perform whatever activity is asked of you by the proctor. You'll exit, addressing decontamination on the way, and then you'll take your gear off in the way that you've been taught. So we'll break this down further, and there will be an accompanying video that will show you exactly how we're expecting this to be done. But to go through the JPR first thing, you're going to don your structural firefighting gear. On test day, if we don't have level Bs available, you won't be doing level Bs. So plan on doing your structural firefighting gear with SCBA. You'll then don your SCBA. You'll wear your air pack. You won't be timed on this, but try to do everything efficiently. You're going to open your cylinder fully. All of these things are worth verbalizing, even though you'll be doing it in front of a proctor. It never hurts to mention it, so that there's no question about performing these steps and demonstrating your familiarity with the JPR. Make sure your straps are secure and everything's safely and efficiently worn. Put on your face piece. Check your face seal. Another one of those that, even though you'll be demonstrating it, make sure the proctor knows that you're thinking these things through, so actually say it. Once I've got my face piece on, I'm going to check for a good seal and demonstrate that to them. You're going to then hook up your respirator, so you'll be breathing supplied air. From there, check your partner over, make sure you're both dressed safely and ready to go to work. And then, based on the scenario given, you're going to go into a contaminated area, perform an exercise of some sort, and then you'll exit. So when you exit, we want to clearly identify when you're in the hot zone, warm zone, cold zone. We want to recognize when it's appropriate to get decontaminated and get out. Now you'll see listed, there's sometimes some confusion on line item number 5. Describe how to perform technical decontamination as part of a team. Recognize from your previous studies that there's a difference between emergency and technical decon. Emergency is that more hasty, getting somebody out right now. Either a responder went down or got exposed and we need to get out right now, or this is potentially a civilian victim who has been exposed and we need to get them out and decontaminated quickly so that they can go on to a medical support. When we talk about technical decon, we're talking about that process of a more thorough cleaning of people when they come out. So this is when we get into, if we're doing it with water, where we might use that tank trap and a booster line, where we might be using soaps, we might be using detergents, brushes, spray wands, in order to do a more thorough cleaning. So keywords here, your proctor is mostly likely going to prompt you and ask, how would you perform technical decontamination? Recognize that they're asking for technical decon, not emergency. So in technical, we're going to say that this keywords they're looking for is things like thorough, and talk about steps like we would apply water, we would apply soaps, detergents, we would want to actually scrub them down. We're trying to remove as much particulate as possible. It's not done as urgently as emergency decon, so it's a more thorough means of decontaminating somebody as thoroughly as possible. We'll demonstrate the steps of doing this physically but we want to make sure that we're doffing PPE as we've been taught. So once we've done that decon, always understand that you can never be 100% sure you're fully decon. So we still want to take some precautions when we're taking off our gear. So we want to take off our gear and leave it in that warm zone, in that decon line. So we're going to remove our gear systematically, avoiding exposure, avoiding cross-contamination. The last thing we're going to take off is that face piece, because we don't want to expose our face, we don't want to inhale anything, ingest anything, absorb anything. So the last thing we take off is going to be the face piece. And that gear gets left in that warm zone, in that decontamination line, and then you're going to move, you and your partner are going to move to a clean area. For the sake of the JPR, always mention that you're going to complete all necessary documentation. And when it's applicable, we're going to place that equipment back in a ready state for reuse. So there's going to be some memorization to this. It's not simply just putting on your gear and taking it off. It needs to be systematic. You need to be able to articulate, based on the definitions and explanations given in the class, how to explain technical decon and how you're going to do it as part of that team. We're going to avoid cross-contamination, avoid exposure, avoid contamination. And then we're going to take off our gear in a systematic way that avoids exposure to you or anybody else. We're going to complete our documentation and get our gear back in a ready state. And that completes your JPR number 6. And again, there will be an accompanying video to give you a physical representation of how to pass this JPR.